Volkswagen's perennially practical, family-friendly Passat has always been regarded as a sensible set of wheels. Now, in 7th generation guise, it comes with the promise of low running costs, class-leading refinement, high-tech equipment and gadgetry previously limited to much more expensive models, plus a premium quality cabin. More than ever, this stalwart, the family, saloon and estate sectors, is aimed at company and private buyers who want something that's a cut above the mainstream. Volkswagen designs cars for the people who will buy them. And the people who will buy this Passat, medium-range Mondeo class customers looking for higher quality, well, they're usually very sure of what they want. More style, better comfort and lower running costs, all of which this 7th generation model claims to deliver. We didn't set out to build a new car, the company says. We set out to build a new Passat. The difference is important. While other brands have been persuaded by pimply-faced magazine road testers that cars of this kind ought to be able to drive on their door handles, Volkswagen knows what its customer base really needs: a car that will lower the heartbeat rather than raise it. And as with any company that really knows its market, the rewards for the Wolfsburg maker have been considerable with this model line. Since we saw the very first Passat way back in 1973, over 1,100 have been sold every single day, the current running total being over 15 million, sold across 100 countries. Like its smaller Golf stablemate, this car isn't just an integral part of the Volkswagen range, it's pretty much a brand in itself. But the danger of such sales success is that it can result in an overly conservative approach when the time comes to make changes. And, true enough, at first glance, this 7th generation model really doesn't seem that different from its predecessor. But let's look a little closer. Just how much improved is this car? And can it now really be seen not just as a quality option in the Mondeo and Laguna class, but also perhaps even as a thinking person's alternative to a pricier compact executive choice like a BMW 3 Series or an Audi A4 in the next class up? Let's find out. Received wisdom is that this isn't a car for driving enthusiasts. Or is it? If by that term you mean something that will corner on its door handles, then no, like its predecessors, this Passat is unlikely to suit. But there's more than one route to driving satisfaction. During my time with this car, I've begun to really enjoy the way that it flows from bend to bend, soaking up mid-corner bumps as though they weren't there, refining away every sound not immediately needful to relaxed progress. In 7th generation form, this model looks like a more compact version of Volkswagen's Phaeton luxury saloon. And that's pretty much how it feels on the road. So you see road imperfections, but simply don't feel them. You sense the noisy hubbub of everyday commuting life, but you simply don't hear it. Even if you haven't opted for the laminated side windows, extra bulkhead insulation, thicker glass, and a windscreen that has a thin layer of acoustic plastic sandwiched between two panes of glass, well, they all do an excellent job in keeping unwanted noises out. And the 4-cylinder mainstream engines on offer are all tuned to reduce those unwanted noises. Petrol-wise, the range is based around 1.4, 1.8 and 2 litre TSI units, developing either 122, 160 or 210 PS. Even the entry-level 1.4 litre unit manages rest to 60 in 10.3 seconds on the way to a top speed of 127 miles an hour. Not bad for a car that must haul around a curb weight approaching 1.5 tonnes. The comparable 105 PS 1.6 litre diesel is nothing like as refined and a couple of seconds slower to 60, but it doesn't feel it thanks to a useful 250 Newton meters of torque. Most, though, will want to stretch up to the next diesel in the range, the 140 PS 2 litre TDI that I'm driving here, capable of rest to 60 in 9.8 seconds on the way to a top speed of 132 miles an hour. Hardly startling speed, but thanks to 320 Newton meters of torque, it's able to waft you around on a wave of pulling power. Should you need more, then a 170 PS version of this unit is the only other mainstream engine on offer. Now, All Passats come with this sweet shifting 6-speed manual gearbox as standard, though there is the option of Volkswagen's dual clutch semi-automatic DSG transmission on all models bar the 1.6 litre diesel should you want it. Now, I've specified this car without the sport trim that drops the suspension by 15mm, supposedly in pursuit of sharper responses and stronger grip. You could also tick the box for the ACC adaptive chassis control system that sharpens the electrically assisted power steering and enables you to alter the suspension feel through 3 different modes: comfort, normal and sport, so that you can adjust the car to suit the road that you're on and the mood that you're in. You could even go for the clever XDS electronic limited slip differential that Volkswagen has borrowed from its sporty models, that cures the natural tendency of the car to the nose of the car to run wide when pressing on through the bends, and it gives the car greater traction in the wet and much sharper turning. But if you want me to be honest, I personally wouldn't bother with any of it. There are other cars in this class that do the whole sporty thing so much better, but none that are as rewarding and relaxing to drive over poor roads and over longer distances. This, after all, is the ideal car for the high mileage company driver, offering a near perfect driving position with a huge range of adjustability for both seat and steering wheel, and a whole driving position that's perfectly aligned with the pedals so that you sit straight and not at a slight angle, as can be the case with some rivals. The clear instrumentation also helps, as does the excellent all-round visibility. The Passat has never been a trendy follower of fashion. Rarely has this model ever caused heads to turn or hearts to miss a beat. And none of that has changed with this 7th generation model. Its subtly evolved design is unadventurous, despite stylist Klaus Bischoff changing every panel bar the roof. Yet for all that, it's a very clever look. Even though this car is just 4mm longer than its predecessor, with width, height, door and window apertures and a body understructure that's pretty much the same, your first impression on viewing it is of a car that's wider and more imposing. Now, the wide corporate grille here helps, as do the Mercedes-style rear lamps and the more pronounced bonnet crease lines. It's the kind of subtle update that created the Mark 6 Golf out of the previous one, and it references other Volkswagen models for a more consistent family look. All of which is important, for it continues a trend that in recent years has seen this model in its own quiet, unassuming way begin to slowly pull the carpet from beneath the wheels of the executive brands. Once a byword for a middle management anonymity, this Passat has now become a genuinely desirable way to travel. Or at least this one has. Step inside, for example, and if you close the door too sharply, you can feel the pressure change in your ears. And although the fixtures and fittings are actually little different from before, they've been carefully recrafted with revised switchgear and the addition of this classy analogue clock. Smart touches borrowed from Volkswagen's £50,000 Phaeton luxury saloon include nicer seat materials, plusher door trim, and the introduction of subtle ambient lighting. The result may not be the last word in design flair, but as a day-to-day experience, it feels very nice indeed. All very nice, but this car must also function as practical family transport. How does it stack up against the tape measure? Well, take a seat here in the back, and you'll find that it's pretty competitive. Though it can't quite match Ford's class-leading Mondeo for interior capacity, the standards of head, leg and shoulder room that it does offer are very ample indeed for 4, though anyone confined to the middle of the bench is going to be rather restricted by this hefty central transmission tunnel, and the backrest for all rear seat occupants is rather upright. Out back, there's a spacious 565 litre boot, and on the options list there's a really natty way of accessing it. Suppose you've been to the supermarket, you're coming out into the car park and you're laden down with 2 heavy bags of shopping. You're approaching the car. If you specified this feature, then you won't need to put your shopping down to open the boot lid. You can just wave your foot underneath this sensor and the boot lid will raise automatically. Now, the engineers have put in provision for a ski hatch for really long items, and if that's not enough, you can release these catches to fold down the seat backs to release up to 1001 litres of total space. If that's not enough, then of course there's the Passat Estate body style, which actually most customers now choose, which offers either 603 or 1731 litres of total space, depending on whether you're using the back seats or not. One rather awkward feature of the way that the seats fold on the Estate is that you have to pull up the seat bases and remove the rear head restraints to get a totally flat loading bay, which can be a bit fiddly. But very often you won't need a flat loading bay anyway, and you can just release the convenient catches that are just inside the Estate door and use long items to push the seats forward. Expect to pay somewhere between £19,000 and £28,000 for your Volkswagen Passat, with a £1,200 premium if you want the Estate version that will probably slightly outsell this saloon. If you want a diesel, as most customers probably will, then you're looking at budgeting up to and around, well, at least the £20,000 mark, with a £1,000 premium to go from the entry-level 105 PS 1.6 litre TDI to the 140 PS 2 litre TDI that I've been driving here. Now, at these kind of prices, it's as well not to dismiss the petrol options out of hand, especially if your annual mileage isn't huge. The entry-level 1.4 TSI engine has a very creditable 122 PS, and from there it's only a £1,000 premium to buy into the 160 PS urge of the 1.8 TSI variant. So how do these kind of prices compare against those of obvious rivals? Well, let's take diesel first. If you take the price of an obvious competitor like Ford's Mondeo in 2 litre TDCi form with either 115 or 140 PS, well, that car competes directly with 1.6 and 2 litre TDI versions of this Passat and undercuts it actually by very little. If you look at other rivals, well, you could maybe save up to a couple of thousand by going for a Vauxhall Insignia CDTI 130, but then you only get 130 PS, so you'll have to compromise on power in comparison with a 2 litre TDI Passat. And something like a Peugeot 508 2 litre XGI 140 will cost you about the same as this Volkswagen. When it comes to the petrol options, well, most rivals to the Passat 1.4 TSI undercut it, but only very slightly. When it comes to the Passat 1.8 TSI, well, this Volkswagen holds a reasonable advantage over its rivals. A 1.8 TSI Passat will, after all, save you around £1,000 over a comparable Ford Mondeo 1.6T EcoBoost or a Peugeot 508 1.6 THP 155. But perhaps the most telling statistic I've saved until last. If you take this Passat and compare it to an equivalent Audi A4 with exactly the same engine, you're looking at a saving of around £5,000 by choosing the Volkswagen, which means that if this car really has made it as a creditable compact executive saloon alternative, then a lot of people are going to think it very good value indeed. Now, whether you choose your Passat as a saloon or an estate, it should come decently equipped. Whatever engine you choose, 1.4, 1.8 or 2 litre petrol, or 1.6 or this 2 litre TDI diesel. Now, as well as the features you'd expect from a car of this size and price, air conditioning, alloy wheels, a USB port, 4 all-round electric windows and so on, Volkswagen has upped the specification of this generation model to include extra features like an iPod interface and a leather multifunction steering wheel. And of course, safety provision has been a continuing priority. You don't get the driver's knee airbag fitted to some rivals, but all Passats are fitted with 6 airbags plus anti-whiplash front head restraints. And to try and make sure that you'll never have to use them, there's a whole roster of electronic gadgetry, though unfortunately a lot of it's limited to the options list. Now, anti-lock brakes and ESP stability control you'd expect on a car of this kind, but more advanced technical features include a clever device that nudges the steering wheel back into line should you veer out of your lane on a motorway. And there's also a neat fatigue detection device that measures drivers' responses in the first 15 minutes of every journey. Then, if it senses that you're starting to drop off, if your reactions seem to be a bit dull, then it'll use warning bleeps and a cup and saucer graphic to try and prompt you to stop for a rest and a restorative Red Bull. There's also a radar-guided city braking system that at speeds of under 20 miles an hour can automatically brake the car if it detects that you're approaching a slowing or stopped vehicle too quickly. Now, unlike similar type of systems, it can't detect if you're about to hit a human being or an animal, but it's still a potential lifesaver. For the more indulgent, there's the option of massaging seats that can gently massage you as you drive. And there's the genius that's the arms full boot opening system. If you approach the car with arms full of shopping, you just wave your foot underneath the sensor and the boot will open automatically. There's also light assist, which will optionally dip your lights for you at night, and park assist, which can steer you automatically into end-on parking bays as well as roadside slots, and that's quite useful in a car measuring 4.77 metres in length. It's a sobering thought. Fill your car up at John O'Groats at breakfast, then spend the day and probably most of the night motoring to Land's End for supper. If you're driving sensibly and happen to be at the wheel of a Passat chosen in 1.6 litre 105 PS TDI Blue Motion guys, then you'll be able to do the whole trip without refueling. Now, that means an operating range incredibly of around 1,000 miles, which is amazing for a full-sized family saloon or estate. What makes this feat possible, apart from a sizable 70-litre fuel tank, is a combined fuel consumption return of close to 70 miles to the gallon and carbon emissions of just 109 grams per kilometre of CO2. Even this TDI 2-litre 140 Passat that I'm driving here manages 61.4 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle and puts out a relatively saintly 119 grams per kilometre of CO2. And there's a penalty of no more than around 8% if you choose to specify your car with Volkswagen's DSG semi-automatic gearbox for an extra £1,500 or so. All diesel models get Blue Motion technology badges, labelling which designates the inclusion of a whole host of efficiency features, things like a gear shift indicator, brake energy recuperation, improved aerodynamics, low rolling resistance tyres, and a start-stop feature which cuts the engine when you don't need it, when you're waiting at the lights or when you're stuck in urban traffic. Even the petrol models are reasonably efficient and frugal. The entry-level 1.4 TSI managing 47.9 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle and putting out 138 grams per kilometre of CO2, with the 1.8 TSI managing 40.9 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle and 160 grams per kilometre of CO2. Insurance groupings, well, they range between 16 and 24 on the 1 to 50 grouping scale, and residual values, well, they're amongst the highest in the class. Here's a car that knows its customer. For over 4 decades, Volkswagen's Passat has offered a quality choice in the medium-range Mondeo market. It's a model that for many bridges the gap between the type of company or family car they have to drive, something like an Insignia, a Laguna or a Peugeot 508, and the type of BMW 3 Series style compact executive saloon they'd really rather have. This 7th generation version keeps to much the same script as its predecessors, in the process delivering on Volkswagen's promises of greater comfort, lower running costs and a more upmarket feel. There are, it's true, more affordable, sharper handling choices in this class, but there are none that leave you with a nicer feeling when you wake up in the morning, pull the curtains and see one of these in the driveway. It's a feeling that's very Volkswagen and perfectly Passat.